So here's one of these interesting Sundays where the Old Testament reading and the New Testament reading coincide very nicely, right? Let's look for the first reading, the one from Exodus. To set the stage, what has happened here is that Moses has led everybody out of Egypt, and they're going to the Promised Land, but they don't have any food. And as people who are hungry want to do, they are complaining about the fact that they have no food. And as people are wanting to do, they always think, they say, well, back in the old days, and back when we were in Egypt, at least we got fed. And Moses then goes to God, and God then brings them food, right? He brings them quails to eat, which fall out of the sky in the evening, right? And then they still complain. They're always, in every group, there are people who complain, they grumble. That's what they do for a living. And in this case, they complain, well, we have, maybe we got these here quails, but we don't have anything in the morning. And so Moses said, look, your complaint isn't against me. I can't do anything about that. We're in the wilderness. But your complaint is against God. And I am going to go to God and I will ask him. And so God says, okay, I will give you bread to eat. And the bread that I give you will be such that will fill you no matter what. It will give you, and I will give you just as much as you need. So when you gather it up, you'll have enough that you will be filled, and you will be satisfied, and you won't have to worry about it. And so Moses announces this to the people. And sure enough, the quails come in the evening, and then there's this stuff on the ground. It's not like loaves of bread, which is what they're used to, but this kind of stuff on the ground. And they pick it up, and yes, it was indeed satisfying for them, but it wasn't what they were used to. And this is one of the first things that what we have to understand and appreciate. This reading tells us, and the second reading will as well. When God gives you something, it may not be what you expect. They were expecting loaves of bread, and what they got was what looks like essentially our communion wafers, little round things. But it was enough for them. Everybody ate, and they were satisfied. And so, to begin with, what you have to understand is when things come to you, and after all, God has said, ask and he will give unto you, it may not be in the form that you expect. And then we go to the second reading. And this is particularly important, this reading. This is the first time that Jesus comes out and says, I am the one that God has sent to the public. Before, when he was doing his signs, people looked at him and said, oh yeah, he changes water into wine, he heals people. But any prophet can do that. We got stories from the Old Testament about prophets who heal. He said, well, what makes this guy special? But any time when there was a manifestation from God, it was either just a couple of people there, or it was Jesus and his disciples, and he said to them, what you have just seen, don't go and tell anybody. Now, he knew that, sure enough, one of his disciples was going to go say, hey, did you hear what happened? You see what Jesus did? But at least he gave him what we in certain of our backgrounds know as plausible deniability. He doesn't want to get to the attention of the authorities until the time comes when it is necessary for him to sacrifice himself for the rest of us. The time, you have to have the right time. But now, he has appeared before a large group of people. Yes, not only his followers, but also people who are kind of interested in hearing about this guy and seeing what he has to say. He says, I am the bread of life. You know about all the other bread. You know about the manna which you had in the wilderness. You just asked me about it. He said, but what I will give you is something entirely different. You may have been satisfied with the bread that Moses got for you. You may have been satisfied physically, but you weren't satisfied spiritually. Because if you were, there would be no necessity for me to be here. And now I have come, I have been sent by God to bring you the bread that will satisfy you spiritually. I am the bread of life, he says to them, which, by the way, was probably a huge disappointment to some of the people who were in that group, who were looking for an earthly king. And he's saying to them, I am not he. I am not your earthly king who will take you and free you from the Romans and bring back the old kingdom of Israel before you guys lost it yourselves. I am somebody that God sent me so that in the world to come, and he specifically says that in this reading, in the world to come, you will have a place by me. He who believes in me, he who believes in the bread of life, he says, that is enough. And why is this important? Well, this is important to us as Anglicans because it goes down to that whole issue of what do you need to do to be saved? And previously, you had to do all sorts of good works because when you died and you had sinned, like all of us, you would go to purgatory and you would have to work it all off. And the way to work it all off was not only in purgatory, but by the good works that you did before. And Jesus says here, and the reformers, of course, all point to it. They say, see what he said? He says, believing in me is enough to get you into the kingdom of heaven. When there is a new kingdom, when this kingdom, the earthly kingdom passes away, there will be a new kingdom, and the ones who believe in me will come with me. No necessity, he says, to pile up all of these good works, so you can check them off, and when they go off the checklist, when you reach the certain amount, then you can go to heaven. No, no, no. Just believing in me is going to be enough. And that's great. And we understand that, sort of. What we don't understand really is, what does believing in me, Jesus Christ, what does that mean? And it has been a subject of great debate among theologians for centuries. But here's my take on it. And of course, I am not a great theologian by any means. What believing in Jesus means and believing in God means that when you get up in the morning and you say to yourself, how am I going to do this day? How am I going to relate to other people? How is that going to be when I go to work, when I go shopping and talk to people, when I deal with my family? How is believing in Jesus and believing in God going to be manifested? And there's this kind of a hokey saying, right, that we've all heard about it. People wear their bracelets, you know. What would Jesus do? Well, it's a good place to start. Now, Jesus didn't have all of the interactions that we had, that we have every day. And clearly, although he anticipated it, clearly did not live in the modern age. But what he did say is, believing in me means that every action and every activity has to be done with the knowledge that you are showing your belief in God. And you don't have to say, to everybody around, I'm going to do the next thing when I talk to you to show that I believe in God. No, I mean, that's silly. What you need to do, of course, is to think that, and to think, if I'm about to say something to somebody, is this something that shows my belief in God? And I can tell you, maybe 9 times out of 10 it isn't. So, what you need to take away from this is, Jesus is talking, not, of course, literally. He is not saying, I am literally bread. If any of you have watched the film, Lady Jane, came out many, many years ago, there is a scene where she is in the Tower of London, it's about Lady Jane Grey, and her very few days as Queen of England between the time of Edward VI and Mary Tudor. And because of the fact that these people had made her queen for a short period of time, she's imprisoned in the Tower, and she was a very strong Protestant. And they send the chaplain to the, because she was an aristocrat, or at least from an aristocratic family, they send a high up, the Queen's chaplain, to come to talk to her and to try to turn her away from this evil of Protestantism. And they're talking about the transubstantiation in particular. And the chaplain says to her, didn't Jesus say, this is my body, this is my blood? And Jane looks at him and she says, yeah, didn't he also say, I am the door, I am the vine? Was he a door? Was he a vine? When Jesus says, I am the bread of life, he's not literally bread. He is talking about that which sustains us. And what sustains us is that the belief that, the understanding that if we believe in him and if we follow him, then in his person, as the bread of life, it will sustain us. The same way that the Hebrews were sustained in the wilderness at the time that they were going for the promised land. And just as they were sustained by literal bread, by manna, to make it, after 40 years, to make it to the promised land, so shall we, by believing in the bread of life and believing in Jesus, will, at the end of our lives, and when the time comes for the new kingdom, we will be fed and we will be satisfied. And I bring you these words in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.